everybody. Here she comes. Lisa Bettany, Trey Ratcliff, and Leo Laporte. It's Mostly Photo!
Should we dance? You can hold hands.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. By the way, Dan got it right. He said, let's take the most annoying Coldplay song and turn it into a ravey show theme. It was a Coldplay song, wasn't it?
No.
No? What was it originally?
It was Firework by Katy Perry, okay?
Katy Perry!
They asked me at like 3 in the morning, make a show, and that was...
No, this is good. Lisa Bettany, MostlyLisa.com, professional photographer, and the host of a brand new show on the Twit Network. It's so nice to see you.
It's nice to see you after your travels.
Well, that's what this show is going to be about today. And we couldn't get anybody better to join us on this particular episode of Mostly Photo with Mostly Lisa than Trey Ratcliff of StuckInCustoms.com. Hi, Trey.
Hello, Leo.
Trey is a very accomplished photographer, lives in Austin, Texas, is kind of the king of HDR. In fact, you wrote the book.
Yeah, I will not. It's laced with a little too much hubris for me. I do not say that, but I do love HDR.
The Royal Prince?
There's a lot of great HDR shooters out there,
Okay.
and I'm happy to be among them.
He's a great HDR shooter, but also, more importantly for us on this show, a great teacher of photography and somebody who loves photography and really wants to turn people onto it. So this is not the show. This is the beta of the show, the episode 0 of the show, right? I mean, we're just playing around a little bit. Mm-hmm. But can we talk a little, Lisa, about what your vision for the show would be?
Well, a lot of photography shows really focus on gear and gear reviews and sort of unattainable, lofty goals that most people can't attain.
Right.
So what I wanted this show to be about was really how to get the best pictures with the gear that you have and actually getting photographers to give really practical, easy-to-use tips.
If we make you buy a new camera on this show, we've failed. Right?
Well, I mean, if you, out of the show, become really passionate about it and want to start pursuing a career, then for sure. But when I meet other accomplished photographers, what I want to know, those are the questions that I want to ask. And I want people to give actual tips so that at the end of each show, you can go out and take great photos.
Exactly.
And use those tips.
So we've approached and will continue to approach all the wonderful photographers we know, like Trey Ratcliff. Some of them will come in studio. Sometimes they'll record a tip or a trick. Mm-hmm. One of the things you want to do, which I love, is what's in your bag? What's in your bag? Yeah, ask the photographers what
everyone, that's the first thing I want to do. I always want to poke around and...
Yeah, what do you use? What do you use? And then, of course, for tips and tricks. Yeah. As the show evolves, we'll figure out ways to get you, the viewers, involved in it as well. I think we're going to have some contesting. I know we are.
Yeah, no, I really want to inspire people to shoot and share their photos because I know a lot of people who are sort of tentative about sharing their photos, and I think it's really important to share your photos online, and certainly it's so easy to do on Facebook or Twitter or Flickr or starting a Tumblr or whatever to get your pictures out there and sort of share what you're doing.
Well, we already have a Mostly Photo group on Flickr, so we'll start giving assignments soon and ask people to submit. If you're not already a Flickr member, I'm sure you are. If you have a Yahoo account, you are. Go to FLICKR.com, and that's where we'll be putting up our photos, sharing our photos with each other.
And hopefully starting a nice community where people are encouraging and positive and
no negative Nancy's.
Yeah,
no.
Get enough of that.
No nattering nabobs of negativism. So, Lisa, how did you get started in photography?
Wow. Well, I actually started blogging because I was actually injured. I was a competitive figure skater and I had a bad back injury. So I started sort of blogging because I was, at home and I couldn't really do anything else. And through my blog, I wanted to start sharing photos of my life. And my first camera, my first DSLR was a Canon Rebel XTI.
I remember when you got that.
Yeah, and it was such a big deal. I had one lens, the 50-1.4, and I literally started taking pictures of things on my windowsill. I went out into the alleyways and took pictures of, rubbish in the alley. And, I lived in a beautiful city, so I started taking pictures of Vancouver, and I started sharing them. And I really got such positive feedback from people, and sort of through my blog and through sharing photos, I started just taking more, and I got sort of gigs taking pictures of concerts and various different, like I started doing weddings and
you've been doing a lot of model shoots too.
I did. That's my passion. I've done some modeling myself, so I was really
models love you because they know what it's like. Yeah.
So I love taking people pictures, and it really just started out as something I was doing for fun, and then I just became really enthusiastic about it and started learning. I mean, now there's such a wealth of knowledge online. You can just literally go, like strobus.com was, I think it's blogspot.com.
We will be getting him on, by the way. He's a fan.
He taught me everything about lighting, off-camera lighting. And
cheap off-camera lighting.
Exactly.
I mean, you can have all the timers and all that stuff, but you don't have to.
I mean, when I started, I made everything, just with like masking tape and So I definitely know what it's like to literally have nothing in the way of gear and trying to make it work. I mean, now, of course, I do have really nice gear, and that's great, but I still feel like I can take great photos with my iPhone or with, point and shoot.
Well, that's one of the things that's most exciting right now about photography is how many great pictures you see on Instagram and other iPhone apps, Camera Plus, because people can take great pictures with a camera phone now. And as everybody's always said, the best.
I love seeing photography going mobile.
Yep.
And the availability that literally everyone has a camera in their phone. And I love that people are sharing the moments in their lives. I think that's one of my favorite things about the web is people sharing photos.
That's making a big difference. Trey also has an app. You have 100 cameras.
Yes.
In one app.
Yeah, it came out.
I love it.
It's
so much fun.
It did really well, and it's fun because people don't just buy one app; they buy a lot of apps. And I think if you're sort of a hardcore photographer, not even hardcore, but if you like a lot of controls. I have 2 pages
of camera apps. In
really?
mine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in a folder as well of stuff I use less often, because it's great when you take a picture to have some tools that you can play with. Mm-hmm. So Trey's site, by the way, Trey Ratcliff, is stuckincustoms.com, daily photo adventure with Trey Ratcliff. How did you get started taking pictures? I'm guessing you were pretty little when you took your first photos.
No. I'm not really, I've never taken a class in photography. I never read a book in photography. I'm 39 now. And I got my first camera only 5 years ago.
What? No, just now you're going to make me mad. Now you're going to make me mad. You're kidding.
Well,
So what was that before photography? What did you do?
I've done all kinds of artistic things and design things.
So you had you had a visual sense.
Yeah, had a visual sense. My background is actually computer science and math. And so when I started getting into photography, I went straight to digital. I didn't know any of the limitations that film come with, so I didn't have any of these preconceptions. I didn't know the right way to take a photo.
That might have been an advantage.
So so I created my own tool set when it came to this sort of thing. And I was born blind in one eye, and so I've always seen things in 2D. So it's always been very natural for me to compose a photo, and I've had my own visual system. Right, I've made sense of a 3D world in 2D. And so when it came to looking at the photo that came out of my camera, I was so disappointed. And I thought, I wonder if there's some algorithms out there that can help this achieve the feeling that I actually get when I'm there. So
we've all had that experience of seeing the most gorgeous sunset in the world, and you say, I can't wait to take a picture. And you get home, and it just doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real letdown. I thought, you know what, it's 2009 or 2008 or whenever when I started getting HDR. And there should be a better way. And we've basically had the same camera technology for about 100 years or so. It did jump to digital, but it's still the same thing, just in digital.
Right.
The camera can only capture so much light. It captures so much less light than the human eye. And not every situation is a good HDR one. But
so we should define HDR, which stands for High Dynamic Range.
Yes.
So when I go out in the real world and I look at a typical landscape, for instance, with a bright sky but a kind of a dim shoreline, I don't notice that I can't see the details on the shoreline when I'm looking at the sky, and I can't see the sky when I'm looking at shoreline.
Right.
But when you take a picture of it, you immediately say, oh, I couldn't expose for both.
Right.
So is that because the human eye can see a broader range?
Well, yes, the human eye, we live in this world of JPEGs on our iPads and this but that's not how the brain works. You don't take pictures with your eyes and store them like that.
You adjust. Your brain adjusts.
Your eye moves around and you build this rich neural network.
Right.
And just from the texture of the sand, even though you might not directly look at it. But when you see that sand, the sand is tied to all the other sand you've seen in your whole life. And so there's something more to it there. There's sort of a cinematic scope to everything that you're seeing. It's in motion. It's not frozen in time. And it's not just related to everything your eye is taking in, but it's related to everything that you're sensing, you're hearing, the people you're with, what you're smelling, the heat that you're feeling on your skin. It all becomes part of this rich neural network. So when you actually create a photo, you want it to be evocative and kind of shock the senses in such a way so there's something mysterious that people can bring their own experience into it.
Your HDRs are magical.
Oh, thanks.
Sometimes they're not hyper realistic. Sometimes they're you look at them and you go, that's too good.
Scroll down a little bit. You'll see some of that's
This is a good example though of this isn't how your eye saw it, but it's magical.
Is well, the more you get into HDR, the more you can start to appreciate subtleties in light when you're in these places.
Right. Look at that. That is how the eye saw it.
That's it. That's Hans Zimmer's studio right there. Wow. That's how I saw it.
Cool.
That's how I experienced it.
Wow. So this is a great site if you want to look at HDR. He has some amazing photos on here. And to your credit, Trey, you give away a free HDR tutorial. You can get it also on DVD if you want to buy it and really learn all of this. And later on, Trey's going to give us a lesson because I took some pictures.
Yes.
And I need his help.
We'll see what we can do.
This is the topic of the day today. We're talking about travel because as with a lot of photographers, I think a lot of people, photography really comes into play when you're on vacation and you're traveling.
Oh, for
and you have
sure.
the time.
Yep.
For sure. Yeah. I mean,
and you have something great to take a picture of.
Yeah, I've been trying to sort of encourage people to take photos of their everyday life, but certainly when you're traveling, there's a lot more to take pictures
It's more
of.
exciting.
It is more exciting.
I just came back from South America, and it was just so many good things. I brought back some pictures of the lost Incan village in the Andean mountains called Machu Picchu, and Trey's going to help me bring those to life. You just came back from a trip of Europe. You were at Davos, right?
I was at Davos, which was very
So you were in Switzerland? I saw you were in London as well.
London and DLD in Munich. So,
and of course, because you're Lisa, you took an advantage of these opportunities to take lots of pictures.
I did. I mean, I was at the conference during the day, but at night I would just sneak out and I did a lot of night HDR stuff. And I don't know if you followed my interest in HDR, but at first I really wasn't interested in it. And I think it was more that I was intimidated with the process. I didn't think that, it was something easy, but once you get a handle on it, it's something, you can just head out and I love taking photos at night because you don't have tourists. Like I took a picture of Westminster Abbey and I tried to take a picture during the day, but there's just throngs of tourists. But at night it's like nice and calm and you can take.
Right. And even if there are a few tourists, they get blurred out in your long exposures if you're using a tripod as they walk through.
I just clone them out.
No, I did that when I was in Egypt. Egypt is just throngs everywhere.
Yeah.
So I did it like a 2-minute exposure.
Uh-huh.
And the people just become little smudges.
Yeah.
But you got some amazing. This is Buckingham Palace. This is an HDR shot, right, Lisa?
Yeah. I'm very, very new at them. So for me, it's.
Well, Trey's going to get us up to speed on this.
That's fine. I think that photo is just fine. It's fun, isn't it? It comes out nice.
It is.
I think it looks beautiful.
It has a nice texture to
Probably a time exposure too, right?
Yeah, I think that was 5 shots, starting at 8 seconds, going to about 25 seconds, all the same.
You're patient.
I am patient. What was funny is I've had a lot of problems shooting in different places, like getting in trouble for shooting. I basically get yelled at on a daily basis.
What?
I don't know if you... I always get yelled at. Why are you taking photos? Who are you? What are you doing?
It's bad in London.
Is it really?
Oh my gosh, London.
I know Thomas Hawk, the photographer, has been kind of on a rampage about how
he really has,
people get stopped taking photos. It's legal, But the authorities seem to want to stop you. And I guess it's maybe fear of terrorism. Maybe that's why London is so sensitive.
It's terrorism and lawyers. That's
fear of lawyers is appropriate.
I mean, lawsuits is a big problem.
Look at this. That is just now, Trey. I guess we should get right into HDR since we've got Trey Ratcliff here.
Sure,
do you mind?
Yeah.
What are the mistakes that people make with HDR? Where do people go wrong? Let's start with that, and then we'll talk about how you do it right. For instance, you said to me sometimes people make the sky too dark. This is a good example of a great exposure on the sky.
Well, she was fortunate in that she had already a very painterly sky. And whenever you have a sky that's not a flat slate color, whether it's white or blue, you just don't get the halos. Now, she does have halos there, but you don't notice it because it's so mixed into the clouds.
Sometimes with HDRs, you get halos from around objects from the sky. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you get halos whenever you go from a detailed object into a flat object. Because
here's an example of some haloing. Yeah.
The algorithm is doing its best.
This is Parliament in Victoria.
Is doing its best to come up with different tonal contrast as it moves from pixel to pixel throughout the algorithm.
I still love this because the light is so magical.
Whose is that? Yours?
Mm-hmm. No, it's hers. This is all Lisa's. Lisa's good. I love Lisa's pictures. So Trey, where do we? So again, the idea of HDR is to broaden the dynamic range of an image,
right?
So that, well, in the simplest case, the stuff that would normally be too dark is visible. The stuff that would normally be too bright is visible. It's all kind of on the same range of visibility. Is that how you would describe it?
That's right. You want to climb up the scale from the darkest to the whitest and not have anything too blown out or anything too in shadows. However, there's an asterisk there, and it's in a way it's very painterly. It's very impressionistic, and
so you could have it look kind of unusual. It's okay.
You can.
This is an example maybe of pushing it into that painterly area.
Yeah.
That was one exposure. So sometimes I do fake HDR. So if I was actually in a bus.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, in a bus.
But you got the shot.
So yeah, I had the shot and I, I'll take several shots and I'll, change the exposure on one and then I'll just pile them up.
But for those of us who shoot with better cameras, who can shoot RAW, which is just all of the data that hits the sensor, not squeezed into a JPEG, but the RAW file format. Some high-end point-and-shoots do it. All the DSLRs do it. Trey once told me this once, that often a single RAW image has enough information in it to do a high dynamic range.
Yeah, absolutely.
Image.
Some of my best HDR shots are from a single RAW because that RAW file has a thick slice of light. And you can extract everything you need from that single RAW to make a very compelling HDR.
Usually I do what Lisa was describing, which is I do several exposures. What would you recommend? How many exposures does one need?
Well, here's what you do is when you take your shots, go ahead and bracket them. Make sure they're all RAW. Okay, stay in RAW.
So that'll be a setting on your camera if it's a high-end pointer shoot or a digital SLR. When you say what quality you use, there's fine, super fine, or large. If there's a RAW choice, pick that.
That's right, pick RAW.
Okay.
Because JPEG is for children.
and as it turns out, Photomatics, but we'll get to that in a moment.
And then you've got great source material to work with when it comes to making your HDR. You've got the exposures you need from +2 to -2.
Okay, so let's get this right. So you said the word bracket, which means that you shoot more than one shot. You bracket it on the high end of the exposure and the low end of the exposure. And you said 2 stops?
2 stops is perfect.
And I was only doing 1 stop.
Well,
it depends how great the difference is. I mean, if you have a really, really bright sky and a really, really dark building, you want to make sure that, you get a shot where the building is perfectly
You need to encompass the whole range of what's there. So right. I guess it would be different for every shot. So you want to make sure that your darkest exposure sees all the detail in the highlights. That your brightest exposure sees all the detail in the blacks. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Like, for example, if you are shooting a sunset or a sunrise, if you're looking right into the sun, then you want to make sure that you are doing +3 to -3.
You need more.
Yes. In that situation, you need more because when you're shooting into the sun, you need it that much.
This is a sunset shot.
Now, this is from a single RAW.
Wow.
One of my very nice fans at Chicago, she rented a helicopter for me, and we took the door off the helicopter, and we hung out.
Oh, that's awesome.
I hung out shooting sunset. Now, the sun is obviously setting behind the city there, but you see that the front of the buildings are all blue. And this shows how much light you can get out of that raw file, because you can't sit there and take 5 exposures when you're in that situation. So this is a good example of what you can do with a single raw file.
Interesting.
So just to be really technical, I mean, do you decide at the time whether you're going to take 5 images? I mean, you seem to always take 5.
Yes. Unless it's a sunset in which I'm shooting into the sun, then I take 7 exposures from -3 to +3.
And do you tend to stay with the same aperture and shutter settings? Do you have like a favorite sort of?
I always stay in aperture priority mode, and I set the f-stop to whatever is appropriate for what I want in focus. And most of the time, I want everything in focus.
Right.
And since I do so much wide angle stuff like this one from Paris, what happens is that you can really set it at almost f4, f5, and everything is in focus.
That looks like a painting because there's so much. You know what that is? There's so much detail. Everything in a painting is the only way in the past we've been able to see everything.
Right. That's right. And that's why the Impressionists shocked the world, because they were able to actually represent the world in a way that was meaningful to people, because that's how they experienced the world.
It's so neat. Yeah. That looks like an Impressionist.
So this is F5 or?
This is F5, F4, something like that.
It's still a pretty low f-stop.
And when you're...
But wide angle, everything stays in focus, really.
Right.
It's hard to do depth of field type work when you're in wide angle. You got to get really close up to the flowers.
When you're dealing with a low light situation, when you're shooting at night, how do you set your focus?
Well, at night, I set my focus usually at infinity because it's often landscape.
So you use manual focus?
No. I just go put my little aiming reticle on something.
On the moon.
And focus there, right? Yeah. It really only has to be about 20 feet away, really, because that's infinity when you're shooting wide angle. And that becomes my focus point for all of the exposures, and I just leave it there. I will switch it to manual if I'm afraid that it might flex during the brackets, but it usually doesn't. And then I set my brackets up such that the longest exposure is usually 30 seconds. So I have a 30-second, 15, 8, 4, and 2 on the exposures.
That's for a night shot.
That's for a night shot. Yeah,
do you want to show just on your camera where bracketing?
Yes.
You know, I was going to do that, and I'm trying to think of a way we can do it because we just don't have a tight enough shot to be able to pick up. You might be able to show us into
just so what
camera.
It looks like. Honestly, like another piece of advice: just read your manual.
Yeah. Well, this is one of those kind of advanced features of your camera that you may not have. But in this case, you've got a little dial. You put it in the bracketing mode. You've got a little dial, and it spreads out those dashes across the scale, so you can see how many times it's going to shoot.
This might be a better way to see it.
Yeah.
You can see it in there.
Get this off the glare.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. I apologize, folks. This is the beta version of this show, and when we move to the new studio, we'll have cameras everywhere and plenty of ways to do this. I could show you on the Canon. It's the same thing where you go into bracket mode and you can spin a dial, and it will just show you how many shots you're going to take and how many stops apart. So your recommendation is anywhere from 5 to 7.
5 to 7. But really, most cameras, it depends. This is a really expensive high-end camera, right? And most cameras, you don't have to have this nice of a camera. Almost any DSLR will have auto bracketing. And most of them only take 3. And so if you only take 3, go from +2, 0, and -2, and that will do you fine for 98% of the situation.
So I guess I have to go back to Machu Picchu because I shot 3, but they were +1, -1, and 0. So yeah, let's talk about let's kind of do a little mini how-to. And again, I recommend you go to stuckincustoms.com because Trey has such a great
he has
how-to.
a really amazing
But you recommend software called Photomatics.
Yes.
Photomatic, I think.
It's Photomatics
with an X.
With an X.
And it's how much? It's about $100, something like that.
About $100.
You can
set you back.
I actually got the light version for $29.99.
And do you like the light version? Is it fun?
Yeah, well, I could do. I mean, I do a lot in Photoshop, so I just would take it. But I was in London, and they have 20% VAT tax. And I was like, I'm not paying this.
Well, what's interesting is that Photoshop does have HDR, but it doesn't do a very good job.
No.
I
It's
think.
pretty sorry. I was just sitting down with the Adobe guys yesterday, and I told them point blank I thought it was sorry and they could do better.
So this is not a plugin. It's a standalone app, but it will act as a plugin from within Lightroom or Aperture or Photoshop.
Yes, but I suggest, at least in my workflow, and I process a lot of HDR photos.
Yes,
so I
you
am
do.
all about efficiency. And I think in the best type of workflow is to get the standalone program, not the plugin.
Okay. So you get the standalone program of Photomatics, about $100, although they have a free trial version. So if you're just learning this, Windows or
and
Mac.
Trey has a coupon, a 15% off coupon.
I do. I send them a ton of traffic. Stuck in Customs will save you a few
Okay,
simoleons.
so do it through stuckincustoms.com. So I've got that. I've taken, let's say, a picture of, I don't know, some Incan ruins that are 0, -1 stop, +1 stop. And then would I just open it in Photomatics? Is that what you do?
That's right. I suggest that the first
at
thing
this
you
shot.
do, though, is
Oh, my God.
might-
You're just too damn good. See, you
that's
just,
a single RAW there.
Yeah.
That's an Ibiza.
that's what's amazing. Because there's so much information in the RAW that you have enough to do that. Now, how did you expose that? In the middle?
Yeah, this is the middle exposure. This is a
Isn't that
single RAW.
amazing? Wow.
And it just came out really clean.
Was that luck?
It's
What do you think?
everything's a little bit luck, but
Yeah.
honestly,
You can create your
gotta
own
know
luck.
what you're doing.
They say that luck is the residue of design.
Yeah.
And I like to think that. So now, your question about your exposures.
I blew
I didn't
it.
mean to throw you off
I
there.
blew it. I just blew it. By the way, we should mention,
Yes.
this is funny because apparently there was a conspiracy in the way up. Trey and Lisa were conspiring to get me to start using Lightroom, and I've used Lightroom all along. So there are different programs you can use to manage your photos. You're not even using Lightroom here, Trey, right? This is
This is iPhoto.
iPhoto of all things.
But I do use Lightroom. This
Okay.
isn't my main. This is my traveling computer,
Okay.
right? I
And
have
if
my
you
Big
have
Mac Pro at home.
Photoshop, you could use the Bridge program, which is built in. But you
I
need
am a huge, honestly, Lightroom has the best
I like
noise
Lightroom.
reduction algorithm out there. It's
I like Lightroom.
I put it on any night photo. I mean, everyone asks how, I get my photos without some noise, and it's
But you could use, as Trey is, iPhoto. You could use Picasa. You could use Lightroom. You could use Aperture, which is only $80 now in the App Store.
yeah, that's really tempting.
These are programs that'll let you just at least go through all your photos and kind of reject the bad ones, kind of simplify your task. But you're saying, Trey, export those photos out before you go into Photomatics.
That's right, because what Photomatics does best with is JPEGs.
Wait a minute.
I
Believe
didn't
it.
even know that. I've
Believe
been,
Wait a
I've been
minute.
using raw shots.
Yeah.
Just watch how much things will change once you start using JPEGs. So I talked to the gal that runs Photomatics, and she says that if you send it TIFFs or RAWs or anything which you would think you'd want to send Photomatics as much data as possible.
Right. That's why I sent it TIFFs. That's what Lightroom would default
That's
to.
that's what you should think. But what happens is that the very first thing Photomatics does is convert it to a JPEG itself.
Okay,
And
so you
it
have
does
no
it badly.
control. Yeah.
Right. You should do it yourself using Lightroom, or I use Lightroom.
Okay. So we've converted it to a JPEG, and we've exported the full quality JPEG out
Right.
of each image in a stack to Photomatics. Is that right? So we've
That's
got-
right.
we've
So
got the
we have
stack.
3 of your images here from Machu
Machu
Picchu.
Picchu.
Are we going to do this right now? We're going to
Yeah.
do it? Let's do it.
Let's do
All
it.
right, let's
you can
do it.
walk us through it. And just the disclaimer here, I suck. But
No,
fortunately,
These are fine.
in the hands of a professional, these might end up looking okay.
Now, this is going to take, I'm very fast, but still it's going to take me about at least 5 to 7 minutes to clean up. You ready? But I'll talk through it
Yeah, that's fine.
in a sing-songy voice.
No one's in a hurry here.
Okay, so here's your 3 exposures.
I decided to shoot this HDR. I'll talk a little bit about why. Because I had this very bright. We never did get a good sky. It was overcast the whole time, which it tends to be there. So I have a white sky. There's a lot of detail in the buildings down below, and then the mountain itself is kind of dark. So it really seemed to me as a kind of a challenging photo.
So it looks like you shot this at 24 millimeter.
As wide as it would go. That was in the 24-105.
And this was the one 250th of a second.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
There should be one that's half that, right?
yeah, I can't get the info to come up again, but this is obviously the darker one, and this is
Right.
the brighter
And
one.
that's the brighter one.
So you can change the order in which it brackets on your on your camera. I set mine up so it does the darkest one first and then gets brighter and brighter and brighter.
Right now I'm doing the 0,
later.
-1, +1. So I should do -1.
It doesn't really matter, just for organization,
0,
and it stacks easier when you're looking through these things because you get lost. You're like, okay, which one? Which three am I working with again?
Right.
So that's just a matter of practicality. All right, so we're going to load these.
You know why I leave
photos.
it the way it is? Because I leave it in bracket mode and forget and take one shot. And at least that shot will be normal.
I've done that.
That's, by the way,
so many
just so you know,
Okay.
that's why I do it that way, Trey.
So here we are in Sweet Lady Photomatics.
So you've exported the 3 JPEGs, and you're going to open Photomatics here.
Right, now we're going to say load bracketed photos.
By the way, it's got a very simple user interface. There's really not much.
It does. It's very minimalistic. Let me see if these are
there
the right
other
ones.
HDR plugins, Topaz or Nick? Does anybody else make?
Topaz has great plugins, but not for HDR.
It doesn't do HDR.
And there's a lot of HDR software out there. There's even free stuff you can get. There's a lot of freeware you can try.
And the iPhone itself does HDR.
It's sorry though.
Well.
Sorry,
Not
it's
very
called.
well.
It's really tone mapping, I think. But anyway,
Yeah, it's I don't like it. Anyway, so these are the 3 pictures we're going to work with. Okay, so we're going to select all 3.
and I think in this
Say
case,
load.
I didn't bracket at 2 steps, but I think I got enough detail in both sides. Don't you?
I think we'll be fine.
Oh,
Yeah.
Please
Okay,
say so.
but this
I can't go
but
back.
this
to
is a
mine
good
without
picture.
you.
Because it has some elements that I know we're going to see some problems with in Photomatics.
Because there's a lot of detail for one thing, right? And,
Right.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the overall flow here. In that, first, we're going to create the best we can in Photomatics. It's not going to be perfect. And then we're going to have to go clean that up in Photoshop. That's the master's touch at the end, the final cleanup in Photoshop.
So you do want Photoshop to do this right.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't use a tripod. I didn't bring a tripod with me, so I'm handheld. That's also a disadvantage, right? Because as steady as I can be, there's still going to be slight differences in the pictures.
That's right. There'll be a little bit of rotation. Unless you have the arms of a T2000, you're going to be a little bit shaky.
And if you've got moving people in these pictures or moving objects, it's really hard.
Yes.
You kind of want to do, if you do multiple exposures, a still life, right?
Yeah.
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 That would be best, although it's not necessary. I saw the edge of a photo that she had taken inside the British Museum, and there's always people moving. There's so many interesting situations in which there's moving things, there's flags, there's birds, anything. There's another way to clean that up.
Just do it, you're saying.
Yeah.
Just do it.
So we're going to click Align Source Images here because you were doing handheld.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to turn this one off, Crop Aligned Images. And that is because we don't want it to crop on its own because it will reset the 0-0 origin of the resulting shot. We're going to bring the resulting shot.
So presuming that I actually composed it with something in mind, you don't want to change that.
No.
No?
It's not going to do a dramatic cropping of your shot at all,
okay.
but it's going to do a few pixels off.
Right.
And the point is that when we're done with this, we're going to bring it into Photoshop as a layer. And we want that layer to sit right on top of its
The original.
Yes, of its component layers.
Oh, okay.
And this will translate it a few pixels.
We'll crop it later, in other words.
We'll crop it
later. Because if we move it now, we won't be able to overlay it as well.
Right.
Okay.
And these other checkboxes, you don't need them.
Ignore them.
You don't need them.
Okay. So don't crop. Don't let it crop. But do align the images.
Right. Now, you get here into Photomatics, and you never know what's going to show up.
Wait a minute.
Okay?
It looks better already.
Yeah.
Well,
A lot more
I don't
detail
think
on
so.
this.
Well,
Well,
it looks a little better.
There's a lot
It
more
looks a little
detail
better.
inside.
We're going to make it look a lot better. And whenever Photomatics comes up, it always has the previous settings. And since every situation is different, you really don't know what the sliders are going to be.
Let me move your Nikon out of the way there so we can see a little bit better. And again, I apologize for the angle. We're just the best way we can shoot this. I don't want Trey to be too confused, but I think you can see what's going on here.
So,
and again, stuckincustoms.com, he walks you through all of this, and you can really follow it a little bit better.
Yeah, we've got a great step-by-step tutorial. I've taught hundreds of thousands of people to do this stuff, and it's fun. That's the secret about it, is that it's fun.
Oh, when you get your first really good HDR, I think you'd vouch for this, Lisa.
Yes.
It's so exciting.
No, I'm sold on it now.
It's
I
like
really enjoy the process, and there are people in the chat room saying this is something I can afford. Well, I bought the free, or there was like it's $29.99. Like you
don't have to have Photoshop. Although if you're serious about photography,
but I think everyone has, iPhoto, and even like honestly, you can use like the.
Could you use Elements for this, Trey?
Yeah, Elements is fine.
Okay, so that's good. That's $79.
Yeah,
but you can change like contrast and saturation in preview mode,
right?
Like just bringing up any photo,
right?
Assuming that you have a Mac.
But to do what we're about to do, you need to spend a little money on Photomatics and Photoshop.
Yeah, if you're,
and you need to have a camera that will do the bracketing. Although you could even do that by hand as long as you could adjust exposures.
You can do it by hand.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff you can do without the automated tools.
Right.
I'm showing you the optimal way. Okay. So now I ask people not to like okay, his color saturation is at 81. It doesn't matter. Every photo is different. It depends on the ambient light.
Right.
You get used to this, right? You have this Willy Wonka-esque like control scheme.
You can make it look like candy.
Right.
Or like
if you take smoothing and you take smoothing over here, you get sort of this drugged out.
Yeah,
look,
I see that a lot in HDRs. A lot of people do that in their HDRs.
I don't like that. And so the more over here you get, the more realistic it gets.
Now, what is that? That's smoothing?
Smoothing. You have to watch out because they reuse the word smoothing everywhere. It means nothing. All these words are nonsensical.
Yeah.
It's almost as bad as sharpen, unsharp mask.
Right.
Yes.
So what I do when I come through here is I kind of go better, worse, like you're getting an eye exam.
Okay.
It's always a
How
little
are
bit
you
different.
doing that? Is there a button that says turn it on and off?
No,
or are you just sliding it up and down?
Sliders.
I'm just clicking to move it around quickly. And sometimes I like to do drastic movements, and then I kind of whittle my way down to something that feels right.
To give yourself an idea of what that slider does.
That's right, because sometimes you forget, like, what exactly is luminosity? Of course, I know it inside out, but still, occasionally, you never know what the result will be.
Right.
And you see
that's very natural,
the more I go over here,
the less
more
natural.
painterly it is.
Yeah.
HDR is really something that you can take to an extreme if you want to, or keep it. Or just, like, I use HDR all the time just in taking normal photos when I have just something that's dark and something that's light.
And if you use it, you can even use it subtly with even, say, a model shot to give it something a little extra that somebody might look at and say, I don't know quite what's different. The Social Network, no, I'm sorry, not The Social Network. There was a movie with Ricky Gervais in which they shot a lot of it in HDR, of all things, the video or the film in HDR.
I love Ricky Gervais.
It's the one where it's Ghost Town. Remember Ghost Town? Where he can see ghosts. He's alive. He's a dentist, and he can see ghosts. Yeah. And whenever the ghosts are around, they use HDR. You don't know it's... I mean, I've finally figured out it was HDR. You just see something's hyper real about it. I was thinking of tilt shift, which is what they used in The Social Network during the cruise scene. So you're starting to see these still photo techniques.
They use all the tilt shift in Dollhouse, too.
Yeah. Really in the TV show Dollhouse?
Yeah. The beginning of it is all tilt shift.
That's interesting.
I love Joss Whedon.
So have you found... Who doesn't? We all love Joss. Joss, we love you.
Make more shows, Joss.
Yeah, please.
Not on Fox.
Yeah, stop with the Fox. You'd think he'd have learned.
They make you mess up the first episode all the time.
What's wrong with him? So this looks pretty good.
Okay, here's what I don't like about it. And this is what we'll clean up later, okay? So I moved the color saturation up here pretty high, but I do not like how yellow this grass is. It's this toxic yellow. So
it jumps out at you. Yeah.
But I made this toxic yellow because I like the greenness of this.
The mountain looks
If
good.
I drop this down, then we can get rid of the toxic yellow, but then the mountain becomes gray and dead.
Right.
And the background becomes gray and dead. Something else I don't like, which we'll clean up, is the background has become, this is a little blue back here.
Right.
And that's not right. That feels off.
So unlike Photoshop or Lightroom, you don't have control of regions on a photo. Whatever sliders do, they do it to the whole thing.
That's right.
And so you're using the slider to kind of get a mass effect. Even though there'll be kind of defects, you can correct those later in Photoshop.
That's right. And you should get to know all these little sliders. Most of them I don't use, but like this micro smoothing one is quite important. If you move it up here, look at the clouds. Here, the clouds are a little bit boring. Here, they have a lot more drama.
Wow.
Okay.
They didn't look like that when I was there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so you can add more drama if you want to.
Wow. I mean, they really looked pretty blank when I was there.
So I'm gonna move it up just a little bit, and there's probably gonna be a little noise, but we can clean that up later. No problem. All right, so this is pretty good. So let's just compare it. We'll compare it to the original in a moment. Okay, so I'll say process.
And now
Bam,
it's run those adjustments, and there's the final JPEG composed of 3 images with the changes that you specify.
And so, I did a whole speed comparison between Photomatics and Photoshop, and you saw how fast that was.
Yeah, that was quick.
I mean,
Photoshop takes forever to do that.
It's a slow boat.
And by the way, it doesn't produce great results, I thought. But maybe
they're a little bit
wonkified.
Mediocre. Okay, so I'm going to close this thing.
The computer's so clean.
Look at his desktop.
I know,
desktop.
mine's a disaster.
That's one of the great shots that you took at Burning Man. You have a whole portfolio of amazing Burning Man shots.
Burning Man's wonderful. Okay.
It's made for HDR.
So now we are going to...
we're just in the Apple Macintosh Finder here, but now we're going to open it in Photoshop.
I'm going to open up Bridge just because I know a shortcut to load a bunch of photos into layers. So we go into Desktop here, go into Leo.
And you'll load the modified, but will you also load the originals?
Yes. So these are the 4 I'm loading.
So all 4 of them.
All 4 I'm loading. Okay. We might not use all 4 of them. We're just going to bring them in there just to see, because we need to fix the broken parts.
Right.
And you never know from which of the component photos the best broken part can be fixed.
Ah, I see.
Okay. So here I'm in Bridge. There's many ways to use Photoshop. I'm not going to go into all of them, but here I'm going to go to Photoshop, load files as Photoshop layers. And that will bring all 4 of them into here and stack them all up as layers.
Layer.
Yeah.
Which means then we can mask one layer out, bring up the contents of another layer, and so forth.
Right.
Makes it very simple to...
Okay.
But honestly, if you had to stop at this point, like if you didn't have Photoshop,
I think it
still looks
pretty damn
cool.
good.
It's not bad.
But you're right.
I'm such a perfectionist.
Grass pops more than an auto. It's
I just
yellow.
want to make this really accessible to people and say if you don't have, because Photoshop is really an expensive piece of software. Right. So if you don't have that, there are other ways.
You're absolutely right, Lisa. You don't have to use Photoshop, but I have to use Photoshop.
And this is kind of the next layer up of refinement that really makes Trey's pictures particularly nice. But as we said, you could use Photoshop. Anything that could do layers and masking could do this. So Photoshop Elements could do this. Of course, the GIMP could do this. Pixelmator, if you're on the Macintosh, is an inexpensive way to do this. Right? It's just layers and masking. Is that mostly what we're going to use here? We're going to use curves?
That's right.
Else?
We're going to use some masking. And if masking is vexing to people, you can erase through. There's a million ways to skin a cat.
But basically what you want to do is bring one layer in.
Right.
So we're going to replace this yellowish
That's right.
AstroTurf.
We're going to use a brush here. I'm going to put the brush at maybe 50%. Then start brushing through, and you can see how it's getting a little bit more subtle. With every brush, it gets a little bit nicer.
Look at that.
Because
fantastic.
The human eye will recoil at something that looks toxic and not right.
Yes.
It will start to reject the photo.
Right.
You don't want the person's eye, as they're traveling around your photo, to reject it. There's another very interesting thing about, they just did these studies on eye tracking, and they noticed that people's eyes immediately went to the most saturated part of the photo, which isn't surprising.
Right.
But what happens is the cones actually burn out after a few milliseconds.
So the rest of it looks desaturated.
Well, no. What happens is that the eye needs a break.
Right.
And so what the eye will do is it will drift to a less saturated part of the photo. But if you do not have a less saturated part of your photo, the eye will just drift off of it completely.
Go away.
It doesn't take long for those cones to recharge, but you need to make sure that you have saturated and unsaturated parts of your photo so that the eye stays there as long as possible, because nowadays people are so busy. You're lucky if people spend 5...
Well, that's a great tip.
Yeah.
Don't have the whole photo be highly saturated.
Right.
Give somewhere for the eye to rest.
Yes.
Isn't
the
that
retina
a great and
needs
interesting
to recharge as you go across the photo.
I usually, in my portraits, make the eyes sort of the focal point.
That's the place that pops.
Yeah, both in the focus and in color.
Right. But then have some desaturated area, maybe the hair or a shoulder or something, where people can their eyes can just go to relax.
You need space in pictures.
Yeah.
So
breathing room.
as long as there's like space.
Yeah. So when you're painting here, Trey, you're painting out the top layer and going down to the layer below it.
That's
Are you controlling which layer you're going to, or is it?
I'm going to the layer right beneath.
Which is which? The first image.
This is the middle exposure.
The normal exposure.
Right.
I would guess it's generally where you want to go, right? Because that's the one that looks the most
Sometimes you
normal.
want to go to the darker one. Sometimes you want to go to the brighter one. There's a lot of darkness over here on this side.
So we would take the brighter one then.
Yeah.
And how do you make that be what the mask you're unmasking? Do you switch the layers?
Yeah, it's whatever layer happens to be there.
So you have to move the next layer up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it retains the adjustment from previous.
That's right.
Okay.
So let's say this is good enough
What
for government
tool
work.
is this, just so that people can find it in Photoshop?
This is the brush
BB.
tool.
It's
just
the brush
B.
Brush B. That's all?
Yeah.
And then then you're saying brush and brush what? Brush the history?
What
brush
you're doing actually is that's a good
You're
question.
erasing?
So what I'm doing is, do you see this?
Those
thing?
are
This
the
is
brush
mask.
marks. Yep.
And I had a black brush at 50%, which
Okay.
means it's gray. And as I brush on this mask, this indicates where I'm poking through to the lower level.
Okay. So you take the brush tool and you set it to a 50% gray and you paint.
Yes, that's right. I just paint because I'm painting through. See how dark this is over here? That's messy.
So we want to get
So
the
I'm
light layer
painting
up
through.
and paint through it.
Well, even the normal layer would be brighter
better.
than the
Yeah,
HDR
yeah.
result. This is a little dark and dingy over here.
Fix that up.
All right. There we go. And I'm doing this very quick. Normally I'm much more careful, so on and so forth. Let's lighten the sky a little bit so it's not so, apocalyptic.
People tend to over dramatize.
Actually, I
That's
don't
too
wanna do
much. That's too much.
I'm going to drop this down to maybe 25%.
So it's less less
here.
opaque.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just a little touch up there.
Okay, so let's just say we're done and we'll compare it to the original.
So this
that
is
was
the
that was
quick
the
and
after.
dirty HDR.
And this is the before.
Oh man, significant difference. To some, it might say, "Oh, well, he just turned up the contrast," but not really. I mean, it's more than much more than that.
See a little more I want to do over here. And so now this is a lower res version of it. I didn't do the high res, but if you were to zoom in really close on the huge version that you did, you'll be able to see all kinds of detail in here,
Right.
and all kinds of texture. I did it quickly just so that we could,
Well, that's what's one of the things that's neat about Machu Picchu is you get that kind of very fine detail in this spectacular, geography.
Yeah, it's. I'm jealous. I haven't been there
That's gorgeous. I'd love to see your pictures. We got to get him out there. Got to get him out there.
before they close it down, right?
So Trey, thank you. That's just a very quick and easy version of what you would find in more detail on StuckInCustoms.com. He has the free tutorial, and then you also have this on DVD. There's ebooks there. Here's where his 100 cameras in one iPhone app is. And also, by the way, I use the Stuck in Customs iPad wallpapers, which is a series of HDR pictures that you took that looks so good on the iPad.
Oh, thanks.
I just love these.
So can we talk briefly just about, because we've all been traveling, and I know a lot of people have asked about what bags we've used
Yes.
and just basic travel tips. I don't know if...
I got one. I got schmutz on my sensor, and I didn't have a blower with me. Bring a freaking blower with me. You never know when you're going to get schmutz on your sensor.
Yeah.
Gosh, that was frustrating. And also, bring more than one memory card because I only
Yes,
brought one.
please.
What a rookie.
Please.
What a rookie.
Come on. Aren't you in the tech business?
What a noob.
Honestly, memory cards are so cheap.
Oh, yeah. Well, no,
these
I
days.
have a very nice, container with 16 gigabyte high-speed Kingston cards,
Oh, nice.
but I didn't bring it. I don't know what I was
Well,
thinking.
Lisa, you just got back from a trip too. So what did you do wrong?
What
You
did I do
something-
wrong?
And what are you going to fix for the next time?
Well, I brought a lot of gear, which, in the past I've brought less gear and been kind of upset about it because there's certain times when you want certain lenses. But I have, I've kind of a sad neck, and carrying around this gear just killed me. So I actually had, I had a couple of photography bags, and I ended up just carrying around my gear in sort of like a really light canvas bag. And I ended up using my 16 to 35, like the most out of any of the lenses that I brought. And you ended up using your 24 to 105.
I kind of did it the other way. I really started because I didn't want to have a big bag. I didn't bring a bag with me. I brought a couple of lenses that I kept in my pocket because I didn't want to attract a lot of attention. I mean, when you bring a big digital SLR around,
Yes.
somebody tapped me on the shoulder in Buenos Aires and said, "Don't carry that around. You're going to get stolen." you don't want to carry a lot of this gear around. I think you're probably right to carry a nondescript canvas bag.
Yes, that's something I've learned. And another thing that you're making a mistake is by having the actual Canon like 5D
Probably
Mark
shouldn't
II.
say 5D Mark II on your camera strap.
Get rid of that.
That's kind of probably like
Give
an
the price tag
advertisement.
hanging off of
Steal
it.
me now.
Like Mini Pearl.
Yeah, no, you're right. So what does your strap say?
I have
Brownie?
a Black Rapid strap.
Oh, I like those. Those are the straps that they're kind of like, you feel like a ninja warrior because it's a single over the shoulder.
It's like a
strap,
Chewbacca bandolier.
and it goes. And you
I actually have the girly version because I've been taking pictures at these sort of fancy, like at Davos. It was very fancy, and I'm wearing like my fancy clothes, and I don't want something like big and bulky.
Right.
That's gonna sort of. But another thing.
But I noticed you don't have a strap at all on your camera right now.
I know.
Do you not like straps?
Well, I'll put that on, but I've been using my tripod a lot.
Well, the Rapid screws into the tripod hole.
It does, so you have to unscrew it. So
Right.
that's a negative part about that. But I've been carrying it like in my purse or in a bag, and I like to have a hold on it at all times.
Right.
But another thing, I guess, I've been taking a lot of photos with my iPhone just because it's so.
It's there.
Yeah, it's so easy to share, and you don't. I mean, all the times I get yelled at, I just, like, as soon as I get yelled at, I just switch to an iPhone.
Right.
and take pictures.
It's true.
with
If you're
my
going to get
iPhone.
yelled at, having a digital SLR is the way to get yelled at because you look like you're more serious, especially if you have a longer lens. So Trey, so the mistakes were Lisa brought too much, I brought too little.
Yeah.
Right.
Trey, you travel a lot and shoot a lot. Where was the last place you went?
I just spent about a month in China. It was wonderful.
Oh, what a great place to take pictures.
Some government officials there got me behind all these secret places in the Forbidden City.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Now, fortunately, I had an assistant to help me carry everything, and this makes life easier. But really, my assistant isn't always there. Sometimes I feel actually bad when I wake up to go do sunrise. I let him sleep in. So I carry a lot of my stuff myself. And what I do is
Trey, he has an assistant, but he feels bad about waking his assistant up. So, you come along with me to China. You sleep in. I'll go take pictures. What kind of?
he was hurting me. He was a tiny little Chinese guy.
Okay.
And I made him run the
Very
day before
generous
to
of
hit the
you.
sunset. And
Very nice of
he
you.
was on his last legs. So I carry 2 cameras, okay? Because I always
Both of them massive, I might add.
both massive.
I carry 2 cameras, but one of them's a pocket camera. Actually,
Yeah.
3 if you include the iPhone.
So usually, this is my D3S, and I use this for people shots and detail shots, and I keep a 50 prime on it most of the time.
So instead of changing lenses,
I
you
change cameras.
change cameras. And I've noticed a lot of pros do that.
That's what
Oh,
sports
yeah.
photographers
You'll see
do.
them have 4 cameras
Yeah.
strapped around, and they pick up the one that has the lens they need.
That's right.
Is that because it takes too long to change a lens?
It takes I've always got this one on the tripod. Always. And I've got this with my, Chewbacca-esque bandolier
so
strap.
you carry the wide, what is that, 14 to...
That's a 14 to 24.
That's you carry on the tripod ready
on the
to
tripod
go.
all the time, and it's always on the tripod so I can extend the legs and take my HDR shots. But as I'm walking around, there's always interesting details.
Right.
And it's too hard to do it with a tripod.
No.
So, and this really just kind of hangs there, right? It's not a burden at all.
And you just pull it
hangs
up
there. I
and
just
you
pull
take
it
a
up and
shot.
take a shot and lay it
And what
back
lens
down.
is that?
Well, this one is the.
It's kind of a general purpose lens.
This is a 24 prime lens.
Oh.
That's why it's so big. But usually I carry a 50 prime lens, which is quite tiny.
Right.
On there.
Interesting. So you don't carry a zoom for this details camera.
Well, I have been using a 28 to 300 lens a lot. It's a new one from Nikon.
Wow.
It's wonderful. It's got it's a little bit slow, but I don't care because I'm on a tripod.
Right.
And I don't care really about quick shots and a low f-stop.
It was funny because Chris Marquardt, who will be part of this show, our photo guy from Germany, said, Leo, you're going to Antarctica. Don't bring a bunch of lenses. Bring your 24-105. It's fine. Maybe you'd like something a little longer sometimes or a little wider sometimes, but that's fine. And it's true. Sometimes just having the kit lens that has a decent range is kind of your go-to camera.
Yeah, and it's the thing is with your camera and so many cameras nowadays, you don't have to. That used to be the big knock against the lenses that had a lot of flexibility. They go from wide to zoom.
Clarity sucked.
is that, well, the clarity sucked in that you had to shoot at really bad f-stops.
Right.
But now you can just crank up the ISO,
Right.
and you'll never see the noise unless people zoom in. Like the real photo nerds will zoom into 100%, so you have a little noise in the upper left-hand corner. But you can ignore those people.
To be honest, if you're shooting with, a Rebel type, one of the lower end, and you go above, say, 800, it's noisy.
You think so?
I think so.
I disagree.
Do either of you use any denoising software? Topaz has the.
I use Lightroom. It's
Lightroom
amazing.
has some
It's
good
like
denoising.
a switch, and you turn it on, and it works wonders. And I think that if you are shooting with a lower end DSLR, it's something that could just improve your photos a lot, because it's not, when you have a Rebel, you can't just go up to ISO 6400 and everything's beautiful. And that's why I think a better option, if you are, is to get like a 50-1.8 prime. It's $100, and then you can go.
It makes you look like a pro right away when you have that thing.
Well, and I've been told that a great way to learn photography is to pick a fixed focal length, a prime lens, and a 50 is the most natural because it's kind of the closest match to your eyes, and move yourself instead of zooming. Compose. It's a good way to learn. And if you start with a 50, maybe a 1.4 or 1.8. 1.8 is fairly inexpensive and still pretty fast. And spend a few months with that. You really learn how to compose a shot.
And exactly what Lisa was doing when she had her f1.4 in Vancouver and was seeing little objects. Once you realize that you can pop an object off the background and you can have that bokeh layer behind there, and it's a soft focus, it's magical. You feel like a pro, and you can make magic and art out of any little found object.
That's really true.
And you will go around and you will discover this new artistic side of yourself that's been quashed for years.
Yeah. No, that's really true. I think that's the simplest, fastest way to make yourself feel like a pro is to have some depth of field in your shots.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
It makes a big difference. Trey Ratcliff, so nice to have you help start this show off. Don't you think, Lisa? He's so,
yes.
I love Trey.
Yes. No, it's good to, I hope that wasn't intimidating for people and, they think it's too much work, but, it's something that you can start to do right away.
Aspire to, at least.
And really just go out and make your, a lot of people take landscape photos, and it's just a way to make them really stand out and automatically look a lot more professional and sort of take your photography to the next level.
I agree, Lisa.
Yes, he would, wouldn't he? You can find Trey's photos, his tutorials, and a lot more at his website, stuckincustoms.com, and just go to his portfolio and look at some of these, because I can't believe you've been doing this for 5 years, Trey. It drives me crazy. Drives me crazy. It's
fun.
This
I love
guy,
it.
you
Well,
just
it just shows
stuff.
that if you're passionate about something and if you really go for it and have sort of, a lot of people are like, how do I get better pictures? And they're taking maybe 1 or 2 photos a day. I don't know, how many pictures do you take a day, or how much time do you spend on your photography on a daily basis?
A lot. Sitting there in my Lightroom at home, I have over 40,000 unprocessed photos.
And that was just yesterday.
Well, that was one question I wanted to ask. How many pictures do you take? Like, what's the ratio of the ones that you sort of throw away to the ones that you actually use?
Well, I actually tried something new on this last trip. Part of that month, I went 80 days around the world, and I took a ton of photos. And of course, I have some winners in there, and I have some average ones. But then I had all these like kind of middle of the road ones that I was kind of happy with. And I only released 1 photo per day on the blog.
That's
gosh,
good.
I've got these thousands
That's
and
a
thousands
great
of photos.
challenge. Yeah.
It's going to take me forever to release all these. So I made a video, and I strung all 8,000 of the photos together into a short 5-minute video.
Wow.
And it came out very interesting.
Is that on the site?
Yeah, it's on the site. It's about a week old. So if you scroll down, you'll see it.
Oh, what a neat idea.
And it came out very interesting, and it's a neat way to share your photos that anyone can do. I'm making a little how-to on it to show, because I got a lot of questions. How is it done? But normally, I just dump the photos into my Lightroom, and then later I come along and I process them. I used to have this great burden on my shoulders after I got back from a trip. Like, I got to process these photos. I got to get them done. I got to get this stack done. And then if you go on another shoot, you have more photos, and you just have this burden. So I reversed my attitude on all of this. And now
Save
I
it
have
all.
this
Use it all.
Zen-like peace on it. And so what happens is I now... I love having all these unprocessed photos. They're like little poems to read. They're like little movies to watch. They're little things I can revisit. And so I go sit down at my computer and I light candles and I put on some music and I have green tea, and it's a very, very quiet experience. I've got my big 30-inch monitors and I just process. And it's a wonderful, peaceful experience.
Well,
and I
I'm
get to
jealous
revisit
because
this
I'm
stuff.
definitely in the other side of the camp where I feel like I've got to get them out, and I feel
Is this a video?
No, this isn't it, but that's a really cool one.
that is really cool. I was reading that tutorial the other day.
So I'm in that position right now too, Lisa, where I have 4,000 or 5,000 pictures from my trip. I just got back, and it's a burden. It's hanging over my head. So you do it right away. You.
I do. Well, I try. I have different levels. Like, I share sort of all of my pictures on Facebook. You know, my iPhone photos, just snaps, because I want to get them out to people, because I feel
Facebook's good for that, because you don't feel like there's much pressure that they be any good. They're just snapshots.
And I think it's important, especially if you're going to events. I go to a lot of events. I photograph a lot of the Mashable events. And, you know, you want those pictures out right away so that you can tag people and, you know, you can do that. And then my Flickr is sort of like the holy grail, where I post and I've been trying, I have a new sharing site called Mostly 365.
I love that, by the way. So that's a photo a day, right? Yeah,
trying to encourage people to share a photo. And I think there's definitely a place for taking photos that aren't necessarily amazing HDR photos. Like, take a photo, just take photos.
It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't have to be a great work of art. It doesn't have to be a magnum opus every day.
Yeah,
anything
just
is creative and nice.
Yeah,
You're right.
capturing your life, because people always get mad at me for taking so many photos, but at the end of the day, it's it's just nice to have these pictures. And honestly, you get better taking any photo. If you take a photo of a cupcake every day, you're gonna get better at taking photos.
You'll be the best cupcake photographer that ever lived. 80 days, 8,000 photos. This is from Trey Ratcliff's Stuck in Customs. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Mostly Photo with Lisa Bettany. And this is, of course, just the pre-release beta version, just because we wanted to sit down and get together and start talking. But we will do a little bit more polished show. Wow, this is fun. Look at these. Next week and the weeks after. And we would love to hear from you. We don't have an email address yet. We'll set that up. But in the meantime, go to stuckincustoms.com. That's Trey Ratcliff's site. And take his tutorials. Go to mostlylisa.com and check out her great portfolio.
And please, if you do want to start doing a 365, hop in anytime. And don't feel pressure if you miss a day.
Mostly365.com.
And just share your photos. Like, I love to see photographers from every level just loving photography and taking photos.
Trey, I like this idea. I see what you're saying here. Because the photos are sequential, this is kind of almost a photo walk with Trey. This is
There's
what
a little bit of a timeline.
What he took pictures of. Yeah.
And you should do the same thing with
I will
your
do
trip,
this. I'm going to do
because
this.
if you do this, it's not quite time-lapse. It's not a movie. It's something in between. But people would like to just see where you've been.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you capture little things like this, too, as you go through.
Well, not as good as you, but look at this. I know exactly where this was. That's Paris. That is so cool. What fun. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Should I play the music?
Do it. Everyone wants to. Look at them. They're going nuts over it.
You want us to. You want to hear the theme music. Now that we know where it came from, maybe we can appreciate it a little bit more. I'm
a little Katy Perry cover.
I can match. Let me see if I can match the Katy Perry.
You're supposed to come in a Katy Perry outfit, and
well, hey, if someone makes me one, I'll wear a Katy
next
Perry
week. Will you do that? Will you do that next week? Katy Perry, we want to see it. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
On Mostly Photo. Oh, wait a minute. I got your music mixed in there. You didn't tell me you had music, too.
It's great music, too.
Oh, maybe I should play your music instead of her music, huh? Let's see. Oh, now what do I do? Now what do I do? I've got a conflict I got a conflict in action here. All right, well, we'll close
This
with
is why you make the big bucks, though.
Yeah, right. Figure out what the hell to do now.
So let's go for the luggage. It went down and there was no luggage. So where's my luggage? So I'm waiting half an hour for my luggage. So went
Thanks
down
for
to the
joining us. We'll
counter,
see you
said,
next
"Excuse
time."
me, where's my luggage? We flew from New York to Berlin.
Mostly
So he looked into his
photo.
computer and he said, "Sir, it's on the way to L.A." I had one bedroom apartment. There were two things on my mind. I want to go back to my luggage. I want to leave this place behind. Okay, I'm sitting in the airplane to Los Angeles to get my luggage back. It's quiet, and next to me there's a friendly guy from Morocco or somewhere. So we talked, and I wanted to show him the pictures of my boat. And guess what? I find out that I forgot my wallet in the apartment in Berlin. And here I am, no cash, no credit cards, and I'm wearing a suit for 4 days. Suddenly, the nice guy beside me jumps up with a pistol in his hand, runs to the cockpit, and demands that the pilot has to go to Rio de Janeiro. I won. Just one night in Rio. Two. Too tired to complain. Three stamps in my passport. For you it might sound funny. But I was in pain. All right, after 26 hours, we got rescued by the Brazilian anti-terror squad. Nice guys, by the way. Later, at the gate, I see this beautiful lady smiling at me. I go over there and talk to her. And she invites me over to her house. Sounds like there's a chance to shave. In this one night in Rio, we had two glasses of champagne. And after three minutes of talking, we made love again and again. It's 4 o'clock in the morning and I'm getting a little rest. You know what I'm saying? It was a rough night. My cell phone rings. It's my agent Steve. He's telling me he's waiting on my boat in Malibu with all my luggage. Thank God. Ready to go to Honolulu. I get dressed, go to the airport, pick out my ticket because I have to go back to L.A.
No, I like it. It's Wiggles.
Hey,
everybody. What time is it?
It's time for Mostly Photo!
What is this about? It was.
Well,
If you've got a brownie, a night on organic, this is the show that'll make you happy. It's mostly photos and a little bit of fun. Lisa, Bettany, and everyone. Mostly photo. See, it ends too soon. That's the chorus right there. It ends before the chorus.
oh boy.
We need a chorus. Somebody said, this is making my dog howl. I think that's what we were going for.